resolution.
Sorry.
Right.
Sorry,
Oh,
Kevin.
Mr. Smithers?
While we're waiting, because I'm new, I know you've probably discussed this before about the recyclables, which this is about. And so my question is, I've always promoted recycling, but it seems like this might be another one of those cases where the state says, yeah, we need to do this, but the county's gotta pay for it.
Well, we think Mr. Chambers will have be able to answer your question, Mr. Smithers. Mr. Chambers, you have the floor. And you are muted.
I'm sorry, I wasn't, for some reason, I wasn't able to hear what Mr. Smithers was saying. It wasn't coming through right off. So if you don't mind, could the question be repeated?
Well, let's talk about the resolution first, and I think Mr. Smithers can ask his question later.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Yes, I have a resolution to coming forward to hire Barton LaJudas for the design of a recycling transfer facility at the existing Lisbon transfer station, otherwise known as our Ivensberg transfer station. The Development Authority of the North Country has informed the county that in the near future, the Harrisville location that they are operating will no longer be available in the county, and that the county will then need to take care of the recyclables on their own. So this would allow for the engineering of a facility for transfer material from St. Lawrence County and possibly to Recycle America and down in the Syracuse area.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Chambers concerning this resolution? Mr. Ray?
How will it work?
The concept at this point is to utilize a compactor that the Development Authority is currently using in the Harrisville site, compact the materials that are received at the Ivensberg facility and compact it into a tractor trailer and then transport. We would need to have a covered area for this compactor for commercial users to dump their recyclables, and also for the county to bring recyclables from other facilities, county facilities such as Messina, Governor, and Star Lake to the county facility for compaction into the larger vehicle for more efficient transport to Syracuse.
If I follow up, thank you, Mr. Chair. What materials would the county be focusing on for recycling?
All the materials that we're currently recycling, fiber, cardboard, newsprint, glass, various plastics, tin, tin cans, aluminum, that type of containers and fiber.
And how many employees do you see being employed there?
I would see that we would need to hire 2 additional solid waste employees to handle this. It would approximately take 6 tractor trailer loads a week at our current rate to be transported. So nearly a full-time job for just one person to transport the materials. At this point, the Development Authority of the North Country is charging, since June, has been charging the county $22 a ton for transport. But again, that option will be removed here shortly.
Good. Anyone else? Mr. Lightfoot.
Don, at one time, I think you mentioned that we would be looking at doing some of Casella's compacting. That's still on the table?
At this point, I would envision us still trying to keep our current arrangement where Casella would compact their own material into trailers that we currently lease from them. And our tractor would continue to go to their facility as we do right now and haul their material. Not to load it and unload it, but simply have it loaded into county trailers and be directly driven to Syracuse.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Smithers.
Okay, the plan is, I understand, to transport the recyclables to Liverpool.
That's correct.
Okay, and they charge us what for doing the recycling there?
Well, over the last 13 months, the county has spent or paid Recycle America $234,600.06. In the last, in October, September, and August of this year, recycling has gone from us being, by the county being charged for recycling, actually being paid between $3,000 and $4,500 a month, $3,000 and $4,500 a month. We were as high as over $35,000 in October of 2020, but the market has dramatically changed since July of this year, going from $2,600 a month to a charge to now right around $4,000 a month revenue. So I do expect that, in the first quarter of 2022 for recyclables actually to probably go back into the negative territory due to the usually after the holiday rush, there's an oversupply of fiber, and usually fiber products take a dramatic drop in value after the first year. But then start to rebound as demand for product and increases in supply of the material decreases.
Anyone else? Mr. Berg.
You may have already said it, Don, but could you give us a timeline for this transition?
At this point, the Development Authority has not given us an exact timeline, but they have basically advised us to make provisions to deal with this issue on our own. I think if we are going to be dealing with it on our own, I think we should be constructing our facility during the summer months, getting the design done during the winter, and going to bid either late winter, early spring for summer construction.
Okay, Mr. Smithers.
So does it cost the county more to recycle than it does to put it in the trash? I know we charge quite a lot less for the recycling for the trash haulers. And then my question would be, does the state contribute any money towards our cost of recycling?
Recycling does cost more than disposal. The disposal cost is around, at the Development of North Country is around $46, I believe it's going to be, 40 or 47. So it's cheaper to throw it away on average. However, that's not prohibited by the state of New York. The state of New York does not contribute to recycling or solid waste costs. That is a responsibility of county governments throughout the state.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next
Thank you.
up for highway is the resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Department of Judas DPC for consulting services for McCarthy Road Bridge over the west branch of the St. Regis River. Bid number 3358-370 and modifying the 2021 budget for the Department of Highways. Moved by Mr. Smithers, second by Mr. Perkins. Mr. Chambers.
Yes, the reason for this resolution going forward is one, to get our design work done so we can procure the materials. And two is the issue with the structure. It's scour vulnerable. We've had issues where erosion under the foundation that we've had to retrofit in the past. And DNL could provide the specialized engineering services that I need to certify this to the state when we replace this structure, that it is able to withstand the scour or erosion of the footings when we replace the structure. This structure is the McCarthy Road Bridge is currently load posted for 8 tons and it's deteriorating quite rapidly. It's a open steel deck bridge and the steel members are badly corroded and will lead to closure very shortly.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Chambers? I do, Mr. Chambers. Is $8,000 the total amount of the money that is needed for this contract?
Yeah, that is correct. We probably might be coming a little bit less on the cost. I'm utilizing our own forces to do some of the drafting and the survey to keep the cost of the engineering down.
Okay, thank you. Any more discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
We do have, the next one is, the resolution is modifying the 2021 budget for the Department of Highways for overtime, machinery and equipment rental, bridge supplies, and paving materials. Moved by Mr. Burke, second by Mr. Smithers and Ms. Curran. Mr. Chambers.
Yes, this resolution deals with a lot of cleanup for the end of the year for the machinery rental. That's basically internal. Overtime is, for our personnel working at the department. The other items that we have on there are the bridge supplies that in the increase appropriation, trying to purchase. What I'd like to do is purchase commodities or order commodities that I need at this point of the year for various projects. And because of the supply chain difficulties, I feel that is imperative that we do that. The B31 miscellaneous bridge supplies, that it would be for purchasing materials specifically for the McCarthy Road project that we just discussed. And the other, are basically cleanup items, again, within various areas of the department, moving them from one line to the other. With the exception of increasing revenue from other governments. As I think the board knows, CHIPS money, our state funding was up in 2021. And we did additional work for various municipalities, increasing our revenue over what was anticipated. So I know there's a lot going on here in this resolution, but it will all go toward helping us have a successful 2022 construction season, primarily on our bridge projects.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chambers. Any questions for Mr. Chambers concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carried. Next up is Depot Street Bridge reopening. Mr. Chambers.
Yes, thank you. This past week, we did open Depot Street Bridge. We did have a ribbon cutting ceremony and a New York State DOT inspection just prior to opening. I'm very proud of the accomplishment by the county staff, the contractor, DOT, and the assistant, of course, from the county legislature and Mr. Arquette, and helping us get the funding for the project and completing it in 1 year in advance of what originally was proposed by the state of New York. So, and under budget, I may say, too.
Arquette would like to comment.
Thank you, Kevin. I want to thank all of you in the room for supporting that project. Funding is always difficult in today's environment. That bridge was essential, and the folks are really very happy to have that back open. And I thank Don and his staff and all of Ruth's staff, and again, all of you for supporting the project. Thanks much.
Anyone else? Mr. Lightfoot.
Yeah, Don, given the unknowns compared to the knowns, can you tell me what the price of blacktop is going to look like compared to this year, and how that will affect the amount of mileage that we will be able to pay next year compared to this year?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of issues that are going to really impact my answer to that. But I would say at this point, I would think at least double-digit inflation on the blacktop itself. So I would say at least 10% inflation on blacktop and materials. There's some areas that have been significantly higher than that. Other commodities that are going to impact that. And of course, the amount of money that we receive from the state won't be known until April 1 usually. So, but I anticipate at least, us dropping 10% of the miles, maybe as much as 5-6 miles less than what we did this year.
Okay, Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don, I brought it up a couple times over the last couple of months, fuel surcharge for solid waste. At what point, as I fill up my truck at $3.79 a gallon, what point do we start considering that?
I think at this point for our the budget at this point for solid waste appears to be solid. We do have some money set aside in contingency. So I would, at this point, I think we can hold the line on our raising of any fees other than what was proposed in the budget to address the $3 increase by DANK. If that comes where it's an issue, I would certainly bring that to the board. But at this point, we do have, in the proposed budget, we do have money in contingency, and that's in the administration line where we have a contingency line, which I believe we will be okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chambers. We'll move on now to our treasurer, Renee Cole. First resolution is charging tax items. Moved by Mr. Denisa, second by Mr. Berg. And Ms. Curran. Ms. Cole.
Thank you. So this first resolution is charging tax items. It's an annual resolution. I present this at this time of year in order to put these items on the upcoming tax levy. It represents amounts due to the towns for tax refunds, cancellation of taxes, and assessment errors.
Any questions concerning the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next resolution is adopting the mortgage tax report. Moved by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Ms. Curran and Mr. Smithers. Mrs. Cole.
Okay. This is a semi-annual resolution that allows the treasurer's office to distribute monies collected by the county clerk that are due to the towns, the municipalities. The county clerk turns the funds over to my office on a monthly basis, and twice a year, the county clerk submits a report to the state for approval. Upon approval of the state, we submit the resolution for the board's adoption. This amount represents the April through September of 2021 time period.
Okay. Any questions for our county treasurer? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Our next resolution is modifying the 2021 budget for the treasurer's office for taxes on county forestation parcels. Moved by Mr. Burke, seconded by Mr. Perkins. And Ms. Curran. Mrs. Cole.
Thank you. So this is not an annual resolution. It's the first time since I've been here that I've had to do this. The county owns several reforestation properties within the county that are utilized for the production of timber and forest products, recreation, and watershed protection. We are also responsible for paying the property taxes to the school districts and the towns in which they reside. The properties are exempt from state and county taxes, but not the local level. In total, there are 43 properties in 10 towns and 8 school districts. The taxes for 2021 were higher this year due to the revaluation, largely due to the revaluation done in the town of Brazier. It was a 36% increase in assessed value from the 2020 assessment roll to the 2021 roll, or about 3.9 million. And I got that information from the real property office.
Okay, any questions for the county treasurer or an explanation from Mr. Arquette for what's happening in Brazier? So if not, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Our next resolution is establishing a departmental cash drawer for the treasurer's office for collection of county real property taxes in the city of Ivensberg. Moved by Mr. Smithers, second by Mr. Perkins. Mrs. Cole.
Okay. So this resolution is to revise a resolution 12-21 that authorizes our departments to establish petty cash and departmental cash drawers. Typically, this is a once a year resolution, but we needed to come in and request a change to that because my office is in the process of opening a tax collection office within the city of Ogdensburg. So we will need a drawer in order to serve the public and collect their taxes there.
Questions for county treasurer, Mr. Forsythe.
Renee, what's the intent or where do you plan on collecting the taxes in the city?
Okay. Well, I think the next item. Okay.
Yeah, that'll be our, Mr. Forsythe, that's our next item. So,
Okay,
okay, Steve, our
I'll wait.
county
thank you.
attorney, Mr. Button, needs to be recognized, I guess. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think it's imperative that the board be aware, as I think you already are, that this is partially the subject of litigation that is going on. I don't want to necessarily go too far into it, but I do know the board is aware that we're planning for all contingencies, or at least trying to plan for all contingencies. As it stands right now, the city of Ogdensburg's local law number 2 for 2021 has been temporarily restrained. That means that we are back to where we were before that local law was enacted. That doesn't mean that that's where we're going to wind up at the end of the day. And so I think Ms. Cole's discussions as to what we're doing in Ogdensburg are just that, preparation for the worst case scenario and where we're headed. But I wanted to place that caveat on these discussions that there's still a lot to be decided, and much of that will be decided by the court.
Okay, Mr. Forsythe.
Okay, just to follow up then, Steve, what sort of time frame are we looking at if it, in turn, we realize that we do have to collect taxes? How quick do we have to have a spot?
And can I answer that, please?
What's that?
If the county treasurer would like to answer that.
Perfect.
Or it will be actually just part of the other discussion. I don't know if you would like to go ahead with the resolution part
I can wait.
and have the discussion.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So let's vote on this resolution concerning the departmental cash drawer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. And now we'll go on to the city of Ivensberg location for tax collection. Mrs. Cole.
Okay. So it's very preliminary right now, and I'm not, and I wanted to answer your questions as best as I could, but because we haven't had a lot of time to plan for it, and because it is a contingency, at a certain point, we just have to, we have to be ready to go because we will need to open this office the beginning of January, which would be, January 3rd is a Monday. So, and I know the litigation could stop our need to do so, but we need to plan because this isn't something we can do overnight. So right now we're looking at space in the same space as the other county offices in Ogdensburg. It will be a location that people are already familiar with. It will be, if people know where those offices are, they will be able to find us just down the hall. I'm looking at potentially using 2 of my current staff to staff this 2 days a week. We're not certain of the volume, and the staff that I'm going to send there are able to do their regular work. It's a little bit portable, so they will be able to fill their time with that type of work. But we're looking at the tax collection period would be January through May 31st. So we would need to rent a space for 5 months for them to do so. We're trying to resolve, there's some IT things that we need to figure out, as well as office furniture and this cash drawer.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, and I just want to say, we're just trying to plan for being able to go on the beginning of January if it turns out.
Okay, Mr. Forsythe.
Renee, won't we have to advertise and let people know where they have the ability to pay? And when do we start that process?
Yes, we want to start that very soon, early December. I think my last conversation I had with Donna in the real property tax office was, we print our tax bills before December. They have to be actually in the mail and to people for the beginning of January. So our window is pretty small and getting smaller every day. She is looking for the information from us because she needs the address to put on the bill the first week in December. So we may make it to the 10th, but pretty soon afterwards, we're gonna have to make a decision. And yes, we want to advertise, and we've talked about sending a mailing out to notify people because this is a total change for them, and it's gonna be difficult.
Yeah, no question. I just want to know the logistics, I guess. So thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Any questions for our county treasurer? Seeing none, thank you very much, Renee.
Kevin, excuse me,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I have just a couple of other update items for you.
Certainly.
When I didn't get the chance, and I should have when I was speaking about the mortgage tax resolution earlier, I had meant to point out what a banner it was. Actually, that quarter for 854,000 compares to full year last year for 2020. Both quarters was 899,000 for the. So our 2021 year for mortgage tax was over $1.5 million. So I just wanted to point that out because that was pretty incredible. And I meant to say something during that. Bank rec summary should be available for you on Google Drive. Before the board meeting tonight, I sent out the November sales tax to the legislators on that. And late last week, we received the annual NIPA payment, and that is set up to be distributed, I think, in our on Monday. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Reagan has a question.
I was wondering if the treasurer, it feels that we're seeing such a dramatic increase in the mortgage tax report because so many people have been moving around during the COVID.
I actually don't know. My understanding is houses are really just selling and selling for a lot more money. You know, people are getting more than they were asking for. They're getting their offers higher than that. And it's really tough right now, I think, to buy a place on it for any, you know, any reason at all. So I don't know that it's because of COVID though.
I mean, I know from my own experience, seeing people who were flying into Ivensberg during the COVID period, and they had seen houses on the internet, and, you know, one family flew in from California, made a purchase offer and left the next day and, you know, bought the house. And I know there was a lot of efforts to convince people who were living elsewhere that if they could move their job to St. Lawrence County, you know, the IDA has extensive program aimed at convincing people to consider moving to St. Lawrence County. And, you know, it seems interesting that we're seeing this big increase in the mortgage tax from house sales. And as you said, people selling them very quickly and sometimes at higher prices than even they were asking.
Okay. All right, thank you, everyone. We'll move on to the county attorney with Mr. Button. The resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Legal Files Software, Inc. for case management software related to the legal representation of the Department of Social Services and modifying the 2021 budget for social services. Moved by Mr. Denisa, second by Mr. Smithers and Ms. Curran. Mr. Button.
Thank you. I think the resolution fairly speaks for itself, but there are just some observations that I think are supportive of what the request is. What you have before you is a resolution that seeks to authorize expenditures of money to secure a case management system. The Department of Social Services legal unit has been responsible for handling a significant number of files. There are actually approximately 13,000 child support files. There are approximately 360 to 380 child welfare or Article 10 cases. And obviously those are just the annual numbers. Given that type of volume, the fact that we don't have a case management system is actually kind of shocking. It's difficult to keep track of all the time commitments, the scheduling, and the necessary assignments in the absence of a case management system. One of the things that I found interesting, and I chided one of my colleagues on, is that they have been managing scheduling by printing off an Outlook schedule and color coding with colored pencils and highlighters at times. And that's just not a way to stay on top of what the requirements are for continuing to handle this type of volume. So this resolution would authorize the acquisition of a case management software system that would operate primarily within the DSS structure and allow us to keep track of our child support cases and our Article 10 cases. I will note that prior to moving through, we did actually solicit bids from 3 different vendors that were sort of specialized in this type of system. This type of system is utilized around the state. Our neighbors to the south, Jefferson County, actually utilize this system. I will also note that our DSS folks contacted the state to check to see if this could pass through as an appropriate contract for reimbursement, and they were informed that it could. And those are reflected.
Any questions for county attorney? Mr. Smithers.
I would just comment that I was impressed reading the whereas there were so many that were late and now they've become current. I think that's commendable for a county attorney.
Yep. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Button. Next up for real property, we have Bruce Green. And the resolution is elections, real property, and community college apportionments for the year 2022. Moved by Mr. Burke, second by Ms. Curran. Mr. Green.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. This is a yearly resolution that you've got before you that shows the election charges our real property charges and also community college charges that will appear on the 2022 tax bill. Goes out to residents at the end of this month, the end of December.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Green? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next up is, we have information for tax bills for the residents of the city of Augsburg. Mr. Green.
Yes, as Renee and Steve both said, as we try to get together to plan a county bill to go out to the city of Augsburg, we are really under the gun of trying to create a county-only tax bill for the city. This is something very new. As you're aware, tax bills that go out in January are always a town and county tax bill. This is different because it's a county-only bill for the city of Augsburg. As we run our test for these, we find that some exemptions that are on these tax bills are being duplicated for the town. In other words, that town tax exemption is also showing on the bill. We've reached out to our liaison, our IT department at the state level. They're working on it, but in order to make sure that it's clear to property owners, we want to make sure that it's listed on the back of the tax bill, explaining this, that there's those things. I don't know if Dylan has had a chance to possibly put up the first tax bill at all on Zoom. If not, I believe it will be on the Google Share Drive.
Just a minute, Bruce, I'll put that up.
Okay, thank you. Perfect.
There you go.
Thank you. So that first bill is an example, and it's an example only. It's really using, it's a mocked up bill that shows the 2022 county only bill for the city of Augsburg. And as that first bubble at the top says, it's an example. Lower on the left-hand side, it says a town exemption prints here, but applies to the city tax bill in April 2022. Again, the city of Augsburg is a city, not a town, but our exempt coding always refers to it as a T for town. So that's a little bit, could be confusing to folks. As you look over to your right, county exemption applies to this bill. That's correct. In other words, that amount, that $8,550, does apply to that bill. But the one to the left, the town, doesn't apply to this bill. It applies to the city in April. So, and then the further down, we show again that this is using the levy amount and the 2021 tax rate and chargebacks for 2021. Again, only for illustration purposes. So the next two tax bills are quite similar. I've just tried to pull about 3 different ones that show the next one being a town Cold War exemption bill. That's the way it's displayed. They're really showing not only the county exemption, but they're showing the town exemption. So what I'm proposing, and there's a resolution in the packet for your consideration, the full board meeting, we need approval to make a change to the back of the tax bill for the city of Ivensberg only, just to add a table showing that if you see this on your bill, this is what it means. And we are trying to head it off at the pass to explain these things away. As I mentioned a minute ago, we are having the state look at this, and we're hoping that we can get a correction done to maybe half of these exemptions over the next couple weeks. But I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket and not have them not work out. So we wanted to ask for this resolution to go through for your next meeting.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Green? So that resolution will be at the December board meeting, Mr. Green?
That's correct.
Mr. Forsyth has a question.
Thank you, Bruce. You mentioned Steve, Renee, and yourself have met. How many times have you met regarding this?
Probably 2 or 3, I would say.
Okay, and when was the first?
Back and forth.
And when was the first meeting?
Started
Roughly.
early on, I would say a couple months ago at least.
Okay, so you're on it. Okay. All right, that's all I need. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Green. We'll move on to planning with Jason Fulgenhauer. The resolution is up. Okay,
Mr. Chair.
we're all set. Somebody's looking. Bruce.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. One more thing I
Go
wanted.
ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Green. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. And one last thing I wanted to bring up is we do have a chargeback worksheet, spreadsheet that our office uses to appropriate costs to all the municipalities out there, the 32 towns and the 1 city. That it will be listed. If you don't see it, that will also be uploaded to the Google Share Drive. The reason for this, it shows exactly what our cost is, our expenses are, that's appropriated out to, apportioned out to those municipalities. Through the years, we get questions about what are the charges that each town pays for. And there's different columns involved. So that will be listed on your share drive for your review. And I expect that we will be sending this out to the rest of the county for transparency purposes, especially to the town supervisors and the city of Ivensberg as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Green.
Thank you.
Okay, for planning, Jason Fulgenhauer, the resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract with New York State Department of Transportation for accelerated transit capital funds and modifying the 2021 budget for the planning office. Moved by Mr. Burke, second by Mr. Perkins. Mr. Fulgenhauer.
Good evening. Thank you. The county was awarded these funds, the $74,990 from the DOT through a program called the Accelerated Transit Capital Program. We have received these funds before to augment the transit system. And this resolution authorizes the chair to sign the agreement and also sets up accounts to house the funds in the planning office. These funds will be used for a variety of upgrades to the existing bus system and also to new buses that are on order right now. We'll be purchasing, the intent is to purchase GPS systems for all buses, security cameras for all buses, the new buses, as well as the buses that currently don't have security cameras, Wi-Fi for the buses, the new buses, and also audio-visual announcement equipment for all buses. So they're all containing the same, have the same equipment.
Okay, any quick questions for Mr. Fulgenhauer? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Okay.
Thank you.
Jason.
I know.
Next up, our county clerk, Sandy Santamore. The resolution is modifying the 2021 budget for the county clerk's office for license plate cutter for the Department of Motor Vehicles. Moved by Mr. Perkins, second by Mr. Burke and Mr. Smithers and Ms. Curran. Go ahead, Mrs. Santamore.
Okay, so procedure 4002 of the DMV procedure manual requires that all DMV offices as well as county issuing offices be responsible for maintaining the security of, there's a whole list of items. Item number 13 is surrendered and stored plates. So the only way to really secure those after they've been returned to us is by shredding them. Otherwise, if someone were to pick them out of the trash or whatever and put them on another vehicle, the actual original owner of that plate could be ticketed. We do collect $1 for all the plates that get returned. Those totals for 2021 so far are $9,238. For 2020, even through COVID, where we used drop boxes and a lot of people didn't bother to put the dollar in, we still totaled $7,958. And then for 2019, we took in $12,536 for surrendered plates. So this should really cover 1 year of surrenders, should cover the cost of this shredder, which, you know, I think that Buildings and Grounds really needs this. The cutting plates in the manner that they are, I believe, is not safe. And, you know, for security reasons, I think it's important to shred them.
Any questions? Mr. Lightfoot?
Who does the shredding?
Buildings and Grounds.
I beg your pardon?
Buildings and Grounds.
Buildings and Grounds?
Yeah.
That seems like an awful lot of money to get rid of a plate. How many plates do you have to destroy during the course of a year? And if you've already said that the acoustics are very bad or I'm going deaf.
About 12,000, Joe.
Huh?
12,000.
12,000 plates?
12,000 times 2, because there's 2 plates generally for all the plates that we take in. For the most part, for a vehicle, there would be.
So these don't all come in, if I may.
Yes, sir.
These don't all come in at once, they come in over the course of the year. How much time is it going to take Buildings and Grounds per plate to shred them? And then what happens to them after that?
I believe they reduce, but Dale.
Sandy, that's all right. Sandy, we do have Dale Grant there. He could probably answer that question for you.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We spend a lot of time every month. We pick them up once a month. And as Sandy said, we got probably around 2,000 plates a month that we have to shred. Right, we only shred 1 or 2 plates at a time. And if try to give you a picture of the piece of equipment we use, you look at a paper cutter, just have it a lot bigger than that. We got a handle 3 foot long. Repetitive motion. We've had people with multiple injuries, workman's comp cases using this. The new machine, in my opinion, it's safe. We'll be able to do them a little bit quicker, able to do a lot more plates at one time. Built into it, it's hydraulic, electric over hydraulic. You got to operate it, but you've also got 2 hand buttons. So your hands cannot be in the way. And right now, I would say at least probably 16 to 24 man hours a month plates. And we should be able to reduce that quite a bit.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grant.
If I may.
Mr. Lightfoot.
Is it a state requirement that they be shredded?
It's a state requirement that they be destroyed to the point where they cannot be reused.
So couldn't you cut them in half instead of shredding them and save a lot of time and $9,000 on the shredder?
That is what we do now. We do cut them in half. Sorry, Sandy.
Okay.
Hey, I'm sorry, but it just seems like a lot of money to do something that I'm surprised the state hasn't required it. But if you can destroy a plate by cutting it in half, why would we want to buy a shredder and pay somebody from Buildings and Grounds to do 2 or 3 days worth of work in a calendar month? I just don't. I think it's exorbitant. And I won't go for it.
May I say?
Yes.
We
go ahead.
Yeah, we already pay Buildings and Grounds to do them, probably a lot more man hours than what it would take with this machine.
Okay, we have Mr. Denisha and then Mr. Arquette. First up is Mr. Denisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sandy, Dale, Sandy, as you said, it's a requirement by New York State that we destroy the plates. Buildings and Grounds does the job Dale, how many folks did you say, as far as accidents and workers' comp claims we've had?
Since I've been here in my 5.5 years, I can think of at least half a dozen.
Thank you. We could pay $9,000 a whole lot cheaper than we can continue to pay workers' comp claims. Thank you.
Mr. Arquette.
Larry made my point exactly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Arquette. Any more questions for our county clerk on this matter? Oh, Mr. Forsyth.
Sandy, would it be possible to charge $2 per plate? Or is that state rate?
As far as I know, that's a state rate. I could check on that, but that's what most counties are charging.
Okay, I know it's been that for forever. I just,
As far back as I can search, that's what I've.
I'm going 34 years, it's been a buck, so I just wonder if inflation would kick in sometime. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
One in opposition, Mr. Lightfoot. Okay. Okay, so that concludes these resolutions. Our vacancy review committee, we have Mrs. Doyle.
So we have two last departments, both Don Chambers will be speaking to tonight. The first, we have one for each. The first is solid waste. Don?
Yes, thank you. The first one is a site crew leader. We have had basically one individual the site crew leader requesting a voluntary demotion to a heavy equipment operator. And that will make the need for a site crew leader position to be filled. This is primarily for the Star Lake location.
Questions for Don? Okay. Now moving over to highway, we have one position.
Yes, the position is in a assistant civil engineer. This position was vacated due to a resignation. The individual took a position with the Development Authority of the North Country for additional funds over what we pay. This position traditionally has been on a lot of our federal aid projects. The individual that occupied this was actually out on the Browns Bridge project, and this summer as the engineering out on the project, and did many of the duties in our office with assisting with the design and permits for overlays.
Questions on highway?
Mr. Burke.
I wonder, Don, about the departure of the engineer. Is it your assessment that our salaries aren't sufficient to keep people like this?
For the same type of title, apparently the Development Authority of the North Country is paying considerably more for a similar position.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
So that concludes vacancy for this month. I am going to have Dylan pull up the last group of slides that I will present this year on the 2022 budget. As I mentioned last week, if there are no changes to be made, what we would like to do is to move this resolution in motion form at the end of my presentation to the December board meeting, which would be precipitated by a noticed public hearing on the 2022 budget's adoption. Can you pull up the presentation. So keep that in mind as we go through. Certainly willing to answer any of your questions and pull together a separate adoption schedule. Only to mention to you, we are required to adopt the budget by December 20th. If the board does not choose to adopt the budget by that date, what is presented at this time or by that time will stand for 2022. So as Dylan brings up the slides, we're sticking with the recover, reinvest, and redefine for 2022. Wanted to bring to your attention that we have 6 departments that I'll be going over tonight in the recover sense. Because the treasurer's office is included, you have a negative number up there, all told with the departments. But these 6 departments, between the county attorney, the treasurer's office, solid waste, they capture, and highway, they capture all 7 of the funds that provide for county government. So as I've done with the other, on reinvest, with the staffing and the cost, the first one here tonight is the cost of the departments. You're seeing that you've got a mix in this group. You see 2 decreases. As a reminder, and as you look at all of your FTEs, you're looking at the county administrator's budget. This year, we have absorbed governmental services, so you'll see a dramatic increase in personnel there, but we're looking at what happened in the budget, the cost associated with that. In the treasurer's budget, while there was an increase in revenue, there was also an increase in cost. And no change on the levy, as you know, with solid waste, although I would mention that there was an operating increase cost in solid waste of just over 200,000 at 212. The county attorney's budget's down by 43,000, I forgot to mention. So next is the reinvest with personnel, as I was mentioning, modest decrease in county administrator. We switched around some FTE hours, but that number comes in at over 50. Highway, no change. County attorney, 1.1 FTE reduction, and the rest were flat. Now looking at reinvestment with regard to contingency. So there's a lot of numbers here, but what I wanted to point out to you is the growth in the overall budget and the modest increase in contingency. So as has often been referenced, the number attached to any construction project or any project of any magnitude is typically about 15 to 20% for contingency. In the far column, so middle of the first chart, far column on the second chart, you can see up until 2015, there was 1 and then not even 1% of budget was what was budgeted in contingency. So the board adopted in 2016 a fund balance policy, and you can modestly see a more consistent percentage associated with the overall total set aside in contingency. And at the top there, just included over the last 11 years, the average percentage of budget is 0.77. So a far cry, and also when mid-year changes, adaptations are required, that's a very small, if not too small number attached to the overall contingency set aside. So these will provide on Google Drive just so you can match those overall numbers up. And the next, as I just mentioned in terms of recovery, is a measurement of that overall fund balance performance. So previously, going back again, the same measurement, the performance of fund balance returning at the end of the year is measured there. You'll see that percent of budget again with the requirement that 1% of appropriations up until the board reaches that 15% is required each year. And as all of you are well aware, I've struggled each year to reach that 1% in the tentative budget as it stands. However, with the close of the year, we take another look at it, and that appropriation plus year-end outcomes have provided an opportunity for significantly more, up to 3.23% in 18 and 2.5% in 19, slightly below that in 20, and we'll obviously update you as we have those numbers after 21 closes. So the goal has been the 1%, and the 0.75% going all the way back to 2009. In many of those years, as I said, those numbers were below 0 of what we were putting back into the fund balance on an annual basis. So as you look at these, the board's policy has been employed here and improved upon what's returned to fund balance at the close of the year. So that's part of that reinvest. Next slide. So now I wanted to measure for you one of the biggest impacts on our 2022 budget is our changes in health insurance. We're seeing increases of 14% in our hospital and medical. So you can see they're measuring back to 18, but as you can also see, in 2018, we had 783 FTEs. And as you grow, and we're projecting for 2022, 839, all these costs proportionately go with those increase in FTEs. So we're seeing in pharmacy a smaller increase, only about 2.5%. You're looking at that admin cost, which we've sorted out now. For years, it was all lumped into one account in the treasurer's budget. Now it's broken out so you can track it more like this. But I wanted to show you the increases over the years. Dental and vision have seen a plus 10%, 17 and 13 respectively. Life insurance has been just at 10. And then if you recall in our negotiations a few years back, I think we're in year 4, we provided an opt-out provision for health insurance. So we're incentivizing employees who have other options for health insurance to take a buyout. And so we measured that total also for you as well. We do set aside on an annual basis, in that slide a few slides ago about contingency, we set aside a couple $100,000 each year with what we know. Now we don't know who we're going to hire, we don't know what health insurance they're coming in with, but what we do know is who we have for that year prior. And we try to project and make sure there's a set aside for that to occur as well. And the argument could be made that in that couple $100,000 spend, you may actually reduce the cost of your overall plan. Us being self-insured, it's a little bit harder of a sell because we only pay on actually what we spend. We don't have to pay because we don't have policies sitting out there. So this has been a modest reduction, but also an opportunity to take a look at that buyout provision. Any questions on health insurance? Dave, I'm sure you're out there looking at these pretty carefully. Any questions?
None there.
None yet? Okay. So we'll keep going then on reinvesting. One of the areas that we've talked about throughout a variety of departments is our energy costs. So I wanted to break down at least the dollars and then give you a little bit of an update on what that looks like to us for percentages. So if you look at our power cost, and you'll see a resolution when I present the resolutions a little bit later, with regard to electricity. So we've seen an increase here. As you can see, we're projecting 346,000, as well as another increase for 2022. So that's roughly about a 16% increase over 2020. And we were expecting and heard from National Grid back in 2018 that we were going to see some increases attached to the rate changes. So we have a combination, as you'll see to the far side, of fixed and variable rates. We're looking at continuing our remote net metering options on Otter Creek, as well as the potential for some solar arrays. We talked about that relative to lands that we own, as well as with projects that we have coming up. So looking at then the fuel costs broken down, you see a dramatic increase there as well. Gas and diesel, we're looking at finishing our year much higher than we predicted, with 568 at this point in time, planning a 42% increase for gas and diesel for next year, 820,000, and our heating fuel costs also up 56% from 154 in 2020. So we're doing our best to absorb these within budget, but we wanted to bring those forward in front of you to let you know those are extraordinary changes compared to what we were looking at in the last few years. Next up, of course, with reinvesting, we've had what we thought were game-changing years with highway about 2 years ago, and each year it continues. So in front of you are the projects for next year. We're looking at about a $500,000 overall increase in highway, but if you recall, we also appropriated $250,000 from the fund balance in highway, but it's going to be another great year. So we're looking at 2 bridge preservation projects, some work on County Route 35, 27, on the Lazy River Road, and then the continued work in Morristown Bay. All of those, plus whatever the state brings our direction. Depot Street's a good example of that. So being able to flex, being able to come to you to talk about investing or matching anything that the state brings to us and says, can you take these redirected funds, has been important to be able to say yes, to be able to get to additional projects. And there within also readjusting the schedule for the future. Any questions on the highway projects? Okay. So next up was another reinvestment, but also redefining. And in this way, we're redefining what we do, where we do it in highway. And here is just a snapshot of the cost so far attached to Russell, in Lisbon, and then also just an update on where we are with Potsdam. So Russell, we've begun our storage of sand and salt. I have a couple pictures at the end of this presentation to show you. I showed you about a month ago some of the construction, the framing that had been done, and they were starting the trusses. It's come a long way since that time. Lisbon was, at that time that I visited, a little bit behind that schedule. They were looking to pour the concrete around the exterior, and we'll get you some updates on those in the next few weeks as well. And you can see the budget for those for finance and what the spend has been so far. So we've spent 1.6 in Russell and just about 1.4 in Lisbon. We are working on the property transfer for Potsdam with the full expectation that that will take place and that construction will occur in the summer of 22. Any questions on the outpost? This is a perfect example in my mind of redefining. We're not only using some of the fund balance for the Potsdam location, but with the two that we financed, we're decentralizing. Certainly the village of Canton will be a beneficiary of having many fewer trucks, and also just having the maintenance shop here that should reduce the traffic as well. One area I wanted to talk with you about was fleet management. So we've been at this since about 2008. We had been buying cars at that time and buying them at a rate that was provided to us by our departments that could get reimbursement, principally public health and social services. So at that time, we started out purging ourselves of those vehicles or the mileage piece and purchasing vehicles to have employees utilize. In 2009, we started to take on fleet vehicles at a pace we could afford. This captures a quick snapshot since 2018. What we started to do was move all those costs. We expanded much farther than just those two departments. And in 2018, we started to capture those costs in the treasurer's budget. So while the departments do bear the cost, like social services and public health, the remainder of the departments who have vehicles, and as you may recall, the board office has a few that we share between anyone that needs them across the county. Our costs have increased each year, but we still keep in mind that overall mileage expense back in those days of over $800,000. So we've run into a couple snags this year relative to ordering, as many have when it comes to vehicles. We've made some adjustments. We're actually going to be transitioning our sedans over to Ford Escapes. And so that will give us some all-wheel capability. We tested it out this year a little bit with an Equinox type vehicle, and that was very helpful. It gives you a little bit more space also for any kind of transports that social services might have to do. So we're going to try this out. We aren't getting all-wheel drive. We are getting some front-wheel drive. But our hope is that in looking at these, we balanced out our costs with readjusting and redistributing a few vehicles. But overall, it's been very effective. And you hear each few years when Enterprise comes in to share with you the improvement upon their fleet and how they're managing that for and with us. So that's the fleet. Are there any questions on that? We also have our average spend up there at the top of those really 3 years at 454.
I had a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mrs. Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Doyle, you may have said this and I didn't hear it, but are we planning at all to purchase any hybrid or electric vehicles? And could you address that going forward?
Certainly. So we have a grant that's attached to at least one of our hybrid vehicles, and we have and every year do look at the hybrid option. So far, it's been, I think, prohibitively expensive for us, but it's something that we look at each and every year.
I know it's prohibitive. Thank you.
You bet. And I would also just like to clarify that on the fleet, those are all of the county vehicles with the exception of the sheriff's patrol vehicles. Those are purchased. And then on the next slide, on reinvesting, and this is a slide Mr. Forsyth asked for, looking at inflation. Dave, if you can see that line going across there, that gives you some measurement of sales tax lining up against inflation. So we did the same starting point, but laid that out for you with the breakdown, much like you see on some other graphs we provide to you. The green portion is the county share, The orange is the town and village, and then the city of Ivensberg is the top share in that gray-blue color. So this breaks down for you 10 years of sales tax. We're looking at an average rate of inflation, as you can see there, of 1.72%. But in there, you can see it's been relatively flat. I think that the two jumps that I would make observations on, in 2013, 2014, we asked for and received the increase of the 1%. That's been maintained since that time. And around 2018, and since that time, where you can see it again, a little bit more of a climb, was when New York State began collecting internet sales tax. So another boost, certainly to St. Lawrence County. We aren't retail dependent like some counties are downstate, and this has certainly improved, or a portion of has improved our collection. So Dave, does that illustrate what you were looking for?
Yes, it does, Ruth. Thank you.
You bet. Any questions on that? And certainly, as Renee mentioned, take a look at your spreadsheet she shared tonight. That will be provided to you, and is another increase there for the last couple of payments. So the reinvesting slide here measures for you and just ties some dollar amounts to the chargebacks that you just heard Bruce Green speak to in real property. So they're broken down into 4 categories. The only one you don't see here is workers' comp, and we are the administrator of that program. So these are the Board of Elections, real property, and community colleges. The outside 2, Board of Elections and community colleges, are captured on a 2-year lag. So those reflect the expenses for 2020, which we know was an anomaly in many ways. But that's what we will levy out through the chargebacks and collect. Real property is in real time, so they're capturing what their costs look like for 22, and so they capture that cost. And often in our quarterly reports, we talked about Board of Elections and we've talked about real property being 2 areas where at the beginning, first, even maybe some of the second quarter, they look upside down because they receive that revenue as taxes come in, and their expenses, while they have them, like every other department, have to catch up and then outpace what that revenue provided. So those are your amounts for 2022. Board of Elections is 1.2, real property is 460, and community colleges is 836. You'll also see in my resolutions to be presented, we have seen an uptick in community colleges, so we're asking you to transfer some funds over for that. The next one, I wanted to just share with you, because it's in the county attorney's budget, just to give you an idea of workers' comp. So for 2022, that'll be the first full year that Messina will see the benefit and the plan accordingly, from a drop of 4.2 million last year to 3.5. Certainly representative, and also their fund balance numbers. Liability and casualty, that one, we have set aside the reserve. This budget for next year, can you go back? Is 430. And their fund balance, I believe, is a negative, correct? Should be 2.4 in for their fund. And you'll recall, this has been an area for many years we've talked about, measured, talked more about, decided with regard to stop loss insurance. And certainly that conversation is coming around once again. And with some of the increases that we're seeing, it may be worthwhile this time to take a look more carefully at what that cost would be and what the benefit would be for the county. Okay. I did want to shed a little light on the recovery side with the reserves that you have supported each and every year. What we've done with the reserves is once the books close for the year prior, so typically it's around May, we hear from our auditors, and we hear from the Treasurer's Office in April, and then a little bit later in the summer we hear from our auditors. But once we have an idea about that, I come to you after meeting with the Treasurer and make recommendations about contributions to our reserves. And essentially what that does is it takes the fund balance number and it divides it into pots. So it's set aside for capital, it's set aside for the employee benefit, accrued liability, and I'll just explain that for a moment. So as we know, our employees carry accruals. And in the event that we needed to, in one fell swoop, pay out those accruals, the comptroller's approved reserve is an employee accrued liability reserve. So we built that up to 1 million. Our self-insured, that's health-related, is at 750. That's our newest reserve, created last year, I believe. So set aside total in reserves, which again, is still your fund balance, it's just an identified portion. And certainly, I didn't mean to step by the capital, which we're working to build at 1.5, for a total of 3.25 set aside in your reserves as a total of your overall fund balance. Any questions about reserves? Okay. Any questions about anything so far? So finally, this last reinvest slide and redefine is a picture of what is in your budget summary. So while it appears small, it captures the whole picture. It captures the overall 21 budget, the 22 tentative, and what that change looks like. And what that change looks like is 50.332681 with an appropriation of fund balance of $250,000. It doesn't use a dollar of the tax cap of 1.19. The difference from the 2021 budget is $67,809. So this year, we're actually able to lower taxes and lower the levy, which is 17 cents on the true value tax rate. It's the biggest reduction proposed of the last 3 years combined. Are there any questions?
Mr. Forsyth.
Thank you, Ruth. This is a little bit off topic, but on topic is county administrator's salary. A couple months ago, we revisited the county attorney's salary based on, I think, Chairman Sheridan used 5 or 6 similar counties to come up with a value. Would it be possible to do that for the county administrator's salary as well? And maybe you shouldn't look at it, but maybe Dylan or someone else. Is that possible?
I would be happy to.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
So any questions for our county administrator or comments?
So in that regard, if I could request a motion to move this 2022 tentative budget to the full board.
So there's several hands. I think Mr. Dedisha has his hand up first. And second from Mr. Perkins, Mr. Smithers. Who else had their hand up here? Mr. Fay, Mr. Lightfoot. Is there anyone that doesn't have their hand up for this budget? Okay. So I guess everyone is seconding it. So the motion to bring this budget forward. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you. Going into resolution.
With one comment that I would like to make on the budget, what I found astounding was that our pharmacy was 7.4 million, which is in our total medical and hospital is 18.6. So the pharmaceutical is 40% of the cost. And is there any areas that we could target for the health of our employees that would lower that and we had healthier employees? That's a lot of drugs. Yeah, $7.4 million. I don't know if our consultant could be tasked with that. Okay.
We have to, and that is something that'll be coming forth soon.
And this is from what, your committee?
The health committee.
Health committee, okay. Ms. Curran has a question or comment.
I know that when I went to get my COVID shot, they took the county insurance plan and said, well, don't worry about it, we just charge it. So I don't know at what point they went from free COVID vaccines to we're charging you for your COVID vaccine or charging your insurance company. And I don't know if that plays any part in the increase that we are seeing in pharmaceutical costs, and then the medicines they're giving people that do have COVID, I know are quite expensive.
Mrs. Doyle, can you answer that or comment?
I'm sorry, what was that?
So I think Ms. Curran, if you would repeat your comment, please.
I said that at a certain point in time, pharmacies, when like Kinney's Drugs and those places started giving out COVID vaccines, they started charging people's insurance plan. So I wondered, I didn't know what the cost was, if that was part of what we were seeing And if part of also what we're seeing in costs is the increase in the amount of, well, the medications that are being given for COVID are quite expensive. So I just wondered if that played in.
I can find out. I believe that they have been collecting insurances even when the state site was still operational. And I know that I provided mine. I will find out how much of that has been a cost. I know that that number was provided at least to us early on. We can follow up and see where we're at now.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, let's move on to the resolutions. The county administrator. The first resolution is modifying the 2021 budget for property maintenance needs and energy costs due to the COVID-19 response. This is a motion by Mr. Burke, second by Mr. Fay.
So we are looking at a combination of factors here, one of which I've just reviewed with you, the cost of energy, but also the cost associated with COVID supplies. We continue to work on capturing the FEMA potential for reimbursement, which they had shared was going to be 100%, and a variety of other areas, potential sources for reimbursement. So as we do that, we still need to free up buildings and grounds accounts so they can pay their bills through the end of the year.
Any questions for Mrs. Doyle? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. The next resolution is modifying the 2021 budget for the county administrator's office to purchase a multifunction copier in Central Print. Moved by Mr. Perkins, second by Ms. Smithers and Ms. Curran.
So as you know, each year we do target a small amount in contingency targeted for certain types of projects that we leave there until it's time to make the purchase, to go through the competitive process. However, we're going to acquire whatever piece of equipment or project we need to do. So there actually was a set aside of $40,000 for this, and it's come in at $22,000. So we're pleased with that, but also would like to make this purchase and schedule its implementation as soon as possible.
Okay, Mr. Dinesh has a question or comment.
Just a quick question, County Administrator. Ruth, of the 22K, is any of that maintenance?
I believe we will have a service agreement coming forward later.
Okay.
Yeah, but we'll make sure to get that.
Anyone else? Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ruth, are these leases or outright purchases?
I believe this is a lease, or are we purchasing this one? Dylan can speak to this.
This is an outright purchase.
Okay.
Okay.
And yes.
Yeah.
And did you compare it to the lease?
Go ahead.
Did you compare it to, because we always do it through a lease in my scenario, but I just wondered if you compared it to a lease option.
I did, and it was significantly cheaper. Obviously the longer we hold on to the machine, the more we make out ahead, but this machine was in service for quite some time. I think it was after 4 years, we were out ahead of the lease.
Okay, no problem. All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so Mr. Smithers.
Just a question on this purchase of the copier. Is there a maintenance plan or a service contract that goes with that?
Yes, there will be.
Okay. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Our next resolution is modifying the 2021 budget for the county administrator's office for costs associated with community college tuition. Moved by Mr. Burke, second by Mr. Smithers and Ms. Curran.
So this one is traditionally a little bit more difficult to predict, knowing who will go and complete community college around the state. We see some heavy users down in the Rochester area, certainly North Country Community College. We have some that certainly get more attention than others. FIT is always one that we can have very few students, but a lot of cost attached. So this is an area we're seeing an uptick. This does not cover what we've got now, but projecting out through the end of the year, we believe this will cover our expenses.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Mrs. Doyle? The only thing that I would say is we've talked about this for years, particularly the lack of reimbursement for the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. But really the onus is actually on the towns themselves to verify that these students are actually attending these colleges, because the onus, the financial onus is on them. So something that we as board members can bring up with the towns that we represent. So all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay.
A couple of other updates for you. Just a short COVID update. Our positivity rate in the county is 6.77%. They have performed 6,277 tests in the last week. We have reached the first dose percentage of 59.8. That's up 1 whole percent since we started with the 5 to 11-year-olds. So that's been the most movement in several months at any given time. The 12 plus with one vaccination, 67.4. 18 plus is 68.4. 65 plus is 88%. Certainly still our best category of vaccinated population. Fully vaccinated is 55.8%. I was able, a few weeks ago, there was a question posed in discussions about the potential for having to do testing of county staff. And I was able to talk with the hospital system in Ivensberg. They could work with us on the Recreational machine. So there was a question about that. They could work, want to make sure they know what their numbers look like. But that also, I think, was of interest to the board, if in fact we have to go in that direction. That would be an option for us. Also wanted to make sure that you were aware that November 30th, our understanding is they're lifting the PCR requirement for Canadians coming into this country for less than a 72-hour trip. So that's a movement as well. Wanted to let you know, yesterday the state hosted a call talking a lot more with counties. This was the Mohawk Valley and the North Country region, about what the needs are, where they're coming up short, where counties are in need. Certainly a lot of focus on testing supplies and materials, but also about some other counties with vaccination staff and being able to meet the need there. There's another call scheduled tomorrow afternoon, so if there's anything remarkable that's shared, I will send that along to you as well. Renee did mention to you the sales tax information shared via email. Also wanted to talk with you about the training that's required on a mandatory basis. HR is required annually to do training on diversity, equal opportunity, affirmative action, workplace violence prevention, and sexual harassment prevention. So what we'd like to do, we've kind of moved in the direction of we adjourn our committee meeting and then have HR take over and complete the training with all of you. So we'd like to schedule that for meeting in December so that you have the opportunity to get that training. There is no meeting next week. The next meeting will be Monday, December 6th, and that will be with 2 public hearings, one for the reapportionment of districts, utilizing the 2020 census data, and the second, now that the board's moved the resolution, will be for the adoption of the 2022 budget. That will be followed by the regular meeting. We then have operations and services on the 13th, and then the 20th is finance. That will be the last official, at least at this point, official scheduled meeting of 2021. So as you're making plans for the next few weeks, certainly want to keep COVID safety in mind, but also so that you understand the meeting schedule. But Zoom options remain available through January. Questions?
Mr. Burke.
Ruth, do we have any idea of the cost of COVID as it relates to our increased healthcare costs?
I'll find out. We did have a number, it was, I want to say over 100,000, but that was a few months back. So let me find out an updated number for you.
And it probably isn't broken down by vaccinated or unvaccinated.
I don't know.
I'm just
Yeah, I'm not sure if we
curious.
captured that.
Yeah, not that
Good to
there's
know.
any easy answer,
Right.
even if it's, I mean, it is what it is, but.
Well, that'd be where we could apply American Rescue Funds, I believe, and recoup that. Recover, as Rick says, recover. I had one question is the CDC voted 11-0 for booster shots, virtually all ages for those that have been 6 months. Is there any movement towards the state in running another clinic at SUNY Potsdam or anything else?
Requests have been made and entered into the state system. So I will nudge again on that.
Anyone else have any questions? Mrs. Haggard.
Ruth, have you had anybody voice an interest, or have you had any feedback about your suggestion to have an employee shot?
It sounded like you wanted some employee shot. You're gonna have to give a specific name. That's how it came across on the audio.
Mr. Akers, that's not what I said.
That's how it came across. I have witnesses. Yeah. Who would you, could you rephrase your question or repeat it so the audio is much clearer?
Mrs. Doyle had made a suggestion at the last meeting that there would possibly be a clinic set up for the employees. And I didn't know if that was still in the works or it was something that there wasn't any interest in, because I thought it was a great idea.
So we are looking at a December 10th date for a Moderna booster opportunity, and we'll continue to make the Monday clinics at the department available, and the December 15th, we're going to do an employee booster day. So we'll be, especially now, in light of what Mr. Akers just said, making more available for the booster, for sure.
Okay, Mr. Smithers.
Maybe that's why over in England they say jabs instead of shots.
That could be, Mr. Smithers. The jab, right? Okay. Mr. Reagan.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to publicly thank Ruth. Ruth has been working closely with the Save the Ivensberg Correctional Facility Task Force that began into operation after we heard that Ivensberg Correctional was on the hit list. And she helped, she and the St. Lawrence County Industrial Development Agency, Patrick Kelly and John Pinkerton, have been working overtime to marshal the opposition to this ill thought out plan. We saw part of the results of that Saturday night when we were able to transform the Light Up the Night Santa Claus parade into a Save the Ivensberg Correctional Facility parade. And we got a amazing turnout of citizens from across the county who came out and lined both sides of State Street, and then attended a rally at the next to Northern Physical Therapy, despite the cold weather. Ruth was there to show her support, show the county support. I want to commend Pat Kelly and John Pinkerton, for their incredible hard work that is going on every day behind the scenes. And if people think that Ivensburg Correctional is going to close quietly, they don't know Ivensburg. We're going to continue our fight. Over 5,000 people have signed the online petition. I would encourage everyone here to encourage people in your communities to join the fight. The job, they say, may well be their own, because you take a $30 million payroll out of the Ogdensburg area, it's going to have that money turns over 3 or 4 times in the county, and it would create huge losses in all sorts of levels, at schools, at stores, at restaurants, and all kinds of businesses. And the unions are working very, very hard with us, along with the state legislators, to try to bring this to the governor's attention to get her to rethink this decision. So thank you, Ruth, and thank you to the IDA for helping to coordinate all this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reagan. We'll move on to committee reports. First up, We have Larry Janisha for the Cornell Cooperative Extension Board.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing to report at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Janisha. Fish and Wildlife Management Board, Ms. Curran.
We have not met again. Our next meeting should be in December if we can get a quorum together.
Okay. Fisheries Advisory Board, I don't believe that Ms. Terminelli is with us yet. Okay, so we'll come back to that. Governor Fair Board, Mr. Smithers.
I can give you some report on the fair. Overall, it seemed to go pretty well. It was pretty well attended. Financially, the fair income was $227,725. Expenses were $223,433 for a difference of $4,292. They do get considerable income from the storage, which helps the overall picture. The winter of various boats and vehicles that people choose to store there. Total income, as reported with everything included, would be $266,782, and expenses so far would be $252,089 for a difference of plus $14,693. They're planning for next year's fair. They just had an organizational meeting last Monday, which I wasn't able to attend, with some new officers. There's some people that have been there quite a while that indicated they're not going to be working with the fair anymore, and I don't know what's going to happen there. There'll be some ramifications from some of those. Their service was very valuable to the fair, so enough said about that for now.
Okay, while you're on, Mr. Smithers, the Highway and Solid Waste Committee report, please.
Well, I think we covered most of what's on the table with John's report tonight and the plans to construct a recycling facility over in Ivensberg. And we've been updated pretty well on the progress of the outpost buildings for vehicle and salt storage in Lisbon, Russell, and future in Potsdam. So.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Smithers. The IDA, the Industrial Development Agency, Mr. Reagan.
Mr. Chairman, I already said that the IDA has been working very hard on saving OCF, but I'm also happy to report that the IDA has been working very closely with Corning on another expansion at the Corning plant that we're quite confident will result in another multi-million-dollar building over there, and the addition of additional employees. I'm not sure of the exact number, but I can point to the fact that over the past several years, there have been several of these projects, and it has helped led to Corning expanding the workforce there from about 200 to close to 300. So it's continuing, Corning is continuing to find that St. Lawrence County is a terrific place to do business, that we have terrific employees here, that a company that's known for its high-tech approach, that, builds things for the space program, is continuing to find success here in St. Lawrence County. So I commend the local Corning workforce and their management and the IDA for their efforts to help make St. Lawrence County an attractive place for this terrific company to continue doing business.
Okay. Recreational Trails Advisory Board, we have Mr. Arquette or Mr. Perkins. Who would like to go? Mr. Perkins? Oh, you pointed to Mr. Arquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met this past Thursday at the Human Resources Building at 6:30 p.m. and we had an end of the year report which I'll be sharing. It's a nice PowerPoint presentation, but I'll be sending that around to all the legislators when I receive it. But we're ready for snowmobile season. The trails have all been properly maintained following the ATV, UTV season. And we just need snow now to have a tremendous snowmobile season. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Arquette. The St. Lawrence RVRDA, Mr. Forsyth.
Mr. Chair, we haven't met since my last update, so thank you.
Okay. St. Lawrence County Chamber of Commerce, Mrs. Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You should all have received an update directly to your email from this chamber. I'm going to just pick 5 or 6 different highlights to share with you this evening. The chamber is participating in conversations with the team working on the World University Games to be held in January 2023 in Lake Placid. Mr. Akers, you'll want to know this. The hockey pre-qualifying games will be held in Canton and Potsdam, providing a tremendous boost to our tourism businesses. The winter tourism promotion began in early November. We just need some of that white stuff, I guess. As a part of the Thousand Islands Seaway Market New York grant, the chamber contracted Railroad Productions to produce several 30-second videos to use to promote St. Lawrence River area specifically. These are summer videos and will be ready to air in the spring to welcome people back. Video content is extremely important and will continue to be a priority moving forward. The Craft Food and Wine Holiday Market at the St. Lawrence Center Mall in Messina was highly successful with more than 1,500 customers and more than 50 vendors. The event also provided a good boost for the retailers and eateries in the mall. And the membership continues to grow for the St. Lawrence County Chamber with over 400 members. They had a promotion this fall. The chambers launched Fall for the Chamber, and that will continue for the rest of this year. Our next meeting is on December 9th. Please take a look at your email so you can get all the good information that they provided for me.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Haggard. Next up, Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Directors, Mr. Burke.
The state report was provided to us. There are 7 active contracts and all payments have been processed. The crop specialist has been finalizing AEM annual plan. She's been doing soil sampling and also working on equip. The county forester is concluding his hazard mitigation plan for the Emerald Ash Borer in Potsdam. Still getting a number of requests from around the county for help. They mentioned the possibility of selling carbon credits for the county forest land. Not this year because the notice apparently just came out, but it was interesting that, you know, we as a board have voted to not harvest until the health of the county forest are restored. So if we can get some money for selling carbon credits down the road, it's an interesting pursuit. Early on, we don't know what it's. Is there anything else, Kevin, that I missed?
No, you said it very well, Mr. Burke. It's just that the deadline was, I think, December 8th, and there's no way that we could have our county attorney look at that and respond in time. So basically, it's getting monies for the county for not cutting the forest, and like John had said, and I'll reiterate, is, you know, over the past years, we've taken too much. And the forest that we own is immature. And so we passed a resolution, I believe it was a couple of years ago, all of us, that we're going to stop cutting the forest until it's that it's ready. So, and then manage it as it should. if you go back to the years 2011 up through 15, we were hurting for money and we utilized the forest probably more than we should. And we were, selling timber when the market really actually didn't, it actually was at the high spots for some of those materials. So, so it was a wise decision on the part of the legislature. We're in position now that we can do this. So that concludes our committee reports. So anyone have any old business? Mr. Burke.
If I could, just for a second, talk about what Jim said about the Ivensberg Correctional Facility. It isn't just an Ivensberg issue, and he certainly pointed that out as a county issue, and we're all concerned. And I guess I'm wondering. I know we passed the resolution encouraging the governor to reconsider. Just wondering, maybe Jim could be thinking about any other things, other actions that we could possibly take. Chuck Kelly and his pursuit of keeping the site center and the correctional facility open taught a number of people very well, and Jim was one of them. So I'd like to think that we could all help out. We need to be asked what to do, though. Mr. Ray.
Well, thank you for those kind words, John. I know Chuck really appreciated all the help that you gave the Site Center Task Force. You were valuable. I would encourage the board members, when they're talking to their town boards, to ask them to pass resolutions encouraging the governor to rethink this poorly thought out decision, and to encourage others to take a minute and call the governor or drop her a postcard. I know from talking to individuals that prisons around the state are surprised and impressed that so much has been happening since the announcement was first made, and that the other communities that are being affected, there's 5 of them, are still reeling from the impact and have not really begun rallying to try to save their correctional facilities. And I know in some corners, there's worries that by the time they do start working on it, it may be too late. I know that the Save the Ivensberg Correctional Facility Task Force group has been meeting on an occasional basis over the past couple of years in hopes that we would never have to actually swing into action, but we have. And we have been getting incredible support from people of all walks of life, but it's an uphill battle. It's going to be tough, and there are no guarantees. We don't have the support in either house that we once had, and Governor Cuomo had made a personal pledge to Ogdensburg and the people of St. Lawrence County when he was a candidate for governor, and he stood by it. It's very interesting now that we have been getting letters from inmates, incarcerated individuals at the Ivensberg Correctional who have written letters to the governor asking her to reconsider the decision because they say of all the prisons that some of them have been to, and some of them have been to numerous prisons, according to them, this is the safest place that they have ever done their time, and that they don't want to go to some other place where they are quite convinced it will be much more dangerous. And, you know, the numbers bear that out, that, you know, across the state, we have one of the lowest rates of inmate violence, of officer inmate incident, unusual incidents. So, you know, we have a strong case to be made. It's getting the governor to take a look at it at a time when there seems to be little interest in looking at the facts, and a rush to judgment on closing any prison at all for the sake of closing a prison. But thank you, and you know, I urge my colleagues to enlist the communities they represent in this countywide effort, because it is going to affect your communities as well, because the officers that work, the 300 families that work at Ivensberg Recreational live in communities all across this county.
Okay, Mr. Smithers.
Well, I'd like to go a little deeper on this, and I certainly would agree that there's a significant financial impact for the prison closure. My memory's right, it seems like prison populations seem to go up and down. It doesn't seem that long ago that they were double bunking because of overpopulation. Now the prison population is much smaller. And I'd like us to maybe consider urging our representatives in Albany to consider some of the laws that have been passed recently. For example, the Bail Reform Act, where they're less or more hesitant to put people that are committing crimes in jail. That's a contributing factor. There's also a group now that's urging the legislators in Albany to automatically consider parole for, doesn't matter what the offense is, violent offenders when they reach a certain age, because they don't deserve to be in jail anymore. I hope that's soundly defeated, not considered. But there's been a number of laws that they've passed that may be responsible for having fewer people in prison. And I'm not suggesting returning to the Rockefeller drug laws. Okay, we can talk about marijuana sometime, but I think that may be a factor in this also, which we haven't mentioned yet.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smithers.
Can I answer?
Yes.
With regard to the resolution that the board adopted, we could share that out to all the towns and villages in the city, and copy legislators on that. So if it comes up in a meeting and they want to adopt something, they'll at least have a draft of where to get started. Also, to the point, and learned this from the folks from the correctional facility, you know, you've heard some about the renovations that they've undertaken over the last 12 to 18 months. And what we learned was part of that percentage, we know it's been reduced because of bail reform, that's no secret. But what we learned was they had to ship out based upon shutting down pods to do the work. So it was a little challenging to support that when they were doing what they needed to allow the construction project to continue. They had to send folks away. So that artificially decreased those overall totals. That was a little bit discouraging as well.
Okay. Is there any new business, Mr. Denisha?
I don't know if it's new business or old business, but we discussed it briefly at last month's Finance Committee meeting. And it was in regards to heating fuel sales tax. You know, we, looking at the sales tax revenue, we're, I believe, county treasurer's figures, we're $220,000 away from the 2021 budgeted amount, sales tax revenue. 2019, we took in $3.5 million more than we budgeted. 2020 was $4.5 million more than we budgeted. In 2021, it looks like we're going to exceed the overage more than we did in the other 2 years. And, we talked about it. We talked about eliminating the fuel or the sales tax. And I think at least for the winter months, to eliminate the sales tax on home heating fuels. Inflation is at a 30-year high. Fuel prices are at a 7-year high, with no relief in sight. They're going to continue. And fuel oil, it's about $3 a gallon, I believe now, maybe more. So 100 gallons, that's about $24. I know $24 is not a lot of money to a lot of folks, but there's a lot of folks in the county that $24 is a significant amount of money. So I think I would ask the board to at least discuss this. I have raised the issue with all of the town boards within my district. I've talked to a number of folks in my district. Honestly, some places it was lukewarm. There wasn't a lot of feeling one way or the other. So I would say, I have to be truthful, it's about 50-50. But personally, it's not going to impact me one way or the other. I'm still going to be able to heat my house and but there's a lot of folks that are going to be negatively impacted.
Okay, so I'll have to tell you that I was warned that you were bringing forth this by Chairman Sheridan, and I asked Renee Cole, our county treasurer, if she would be prepared for comments. I don't, Renee, are you with us? Okay, so
Yes.
did you? So you're the one that pays the bills. Would you care to comment on the impact of if the county actually decided to remove the sales tax on home heating fuels?
I'm not quite sure where to begin with it. I understand. I understand the desire to help people, the people that need it. When it was brought up last month, Dylan had actually collected what that dollar amount looked like, and it was over $4.3 million last year gross. So the county share of that was $2.5 million. The difference was shared between would be the towns and the city as well. The towns was 1.5 million, would be 1.5 million of that, and the city received 277,000 of that. So you're looking at not just a reduction for the county, you're looking at all the way around with the municipalities. The 2.5 million, I believe we look at a 1% share of our tax levy. When you look at it that way, that's a considerable amount. I think we look at 450,000. So 5%, is that, I don't know if I'm correct on that, Ruth, I think.
Yes, yeah, 460 now, but yeah, close.
Okay. So that's about a 5.5% tax levy just for the county share of that. That would be for the net portion if we were to do something like that. I don't know, if it would be a one-time consideration or would it be a permanent change? Inflation hopefully isn't going to stick around forever, and down the road it could possibly be looked at as a new tax, which is never favorable usually. I would like to think that there's a better way to target people that really need the help with it. We do eligibility for home heating in the heat unit. I don't know if there is a possibility of using some funds to maybe target, the same group, do an enhanced, maybe not match the state amount, but maybe send a county amount to those households. I think it's a big commitment, and there's a lot more at stake than just this year and just the counties. funds at stake. It makes me a little nervous. We might, if it becomes a permanent thing, that sales tax is never, it comes up and it comes down. I mean, we're certainly, I think, peaking. Where we, I noticed the last quarter seems a little bit slower. I know it's great still. And right now it's still looking good, but we haven't seen the reconciling payments for this quarter. I'm just a little nervous about that much when it's over $4 million gross in a year. And that was last year. And I don't know that we had that bad of a heating year. So it could be higher. You're looking at bigger dollars as well on if it was a rougher winter. I guess that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Renee. Mr. Forsyth.
Mr. Chair, I think Tony had his hand up before me.
Okay, Mr. Arquette, please.
Thank you both. If my memory serves me right, Mr. Burke had spoke with a member of Community Services previously on the subject matter. And this was following the $4.3 million number that we were given during that meeting. And I believe, and Mr. Burke could certainly speak better to it, but the member of Community Service indicated that he had doled out some money previously, and it was directed to those individuals that need it most. So I believe that would be a better direction. I believe that's somewhat what Renee was stating, that we need to, if we need to offer relief, it needs to be targeted to those that need it the most. And I think that the proposal with the sales tax on home heating fuel is such a blanket. There would be people receiving, a subsidy basically that wouldn't be eligible for it or wouldn't need it. So I think that if we could explore more what Mr. Burke had brought up previous, I think that would be more cost effective and certainly the better route to take to provide relief to those that need it most.
Thank you, Mr. Arquette. Mr. Forsyth. You are muted, Dave.
I brought up 3 weeks ago, how many recipients of HEAP are there in St. Lawrence County, and what is the benefit amount? Does anyone have that?
The benefit amount I don't have yet, but the amount I could get the social services report in just a minute, if you'll give me a second.
I think they get two fill-ups now, I believe, but I don't know if it's $1,100 or.
Well, there's about 3 different forms. There's emergency HEAP, there's regular HEAP, and then there's supplemental HEAP. So I could get you the different categories, but I believe that in September, there were 9,813 individuals that may include some pooling. So it's probably a combination of both. But I could get that and bring that to services if the group would like.
So you had it at 9,000 households, recipients of HEAP?
9,800 individuals, I believe.
Individuals.
Cases are 4,085.
So if we know the benefit amount, we can plus or minus emergency HEAP, whatever, but if we know the benefit amount, we can calculate based on 9,300 households at $1,100. I think it's $1,100 the last I knew. 4% of the sales tax, and then we can come up with the number. I would rather see those people get it. I don't need it. A lot of people I know don't need it. And that would target it to the audience that I think would need it the most. So if it's something along those lines, I would support that. And I don't think it's too hard to figure out the number if we have the actual amount they're allotted.
Yeah, we'll get that for you.
And I'm going to just tinker with some math here in a minute, but okay. That's what I would support. So, thank you.
Okay, anyone else concerning this matter? Mr. Smithers.
I would just agree with Dave that utilizing the HEAP program would be something that I would be more in favor of.
Mr. Berg.
The idea actually was Bill Sheridan's and Larry's. They talked about this a long time ago. And I think targeting the people that need it most is great, but I think of a comment Larry made about would those people, the working poor, would they ask for help? You know, and I don't know the answer to that, but there are some people who think that they probably wouldn't, but if they would, then we could use money for the CDT program to give it to them unrestricted, so that they could assist the working poor. The people that get heat, and I don't mean to diminish the need there, because they very much need it, but there's a group above that struggle. And I think, you know, and I guess the other question would be, I know, you know, Renee talked about the 4.2 or 4.3 million, but can't we use the stimulus funds for that?
The American Rescue Funds?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they would qualify.
But we can distribute to individuals in the county.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we can keep the towns whole and it's not money out of the county's reserves, why wouldn't we just do away with the sales tax through the heating season? Or the other option, for the people that would prefer to have it more targeted, give it to the CDP. They've got a great reputation. Joe was on the board there for a long time. Maybe you still are, Joe, I don't know. No, but
We'll have.
Mr. Nadisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Burke suggested, and that was part of my email to Legislator Sheridan. You know, right now we have a survey. The San Luis County, we're asking San Luis County residents how to spend the ARP funding. My suggestion was let's use some of it to recover. The original suggestion was lose some of it to recover the revenue loss from not collecting sales tax. But if we can direct some of that money right to the people that need it. Now, and I will submit to you that the folks that are receiving heat right now, you know, and I'm sure everyone that's receiving it needs it. But there's a large segment of the population that is not, they're right on the borderline. They're either not able to get heat or they're too proud to get it. I think Mr. Burke referred to it as a working poor. You know, whether anyone wants to believe it or not, there's a large segment of the population in San Luis County that fits into that category. And, you know, I think if we've got an opportunity, even if it's only for this year, I'm not suggesting we do it year after year. As I said, fuel prices are at a 7-year high. Inflation's at a 30-year high. If we can just do something, you know, target the people that need it. I know, Kevin, you don't need it. I don't need it. I don't think there's anyone in here in this boardroom that needs it, but there are a significant amount of people in the county that need it.
Mr. Smithers.
Now, in using these American Rescue Plan funds, there's a lot of rules and regulations on what they can apply for. And there is some language in there about sales tax. Can't use it in relation to sales tax.
We can't enhance like
We can't reduce the levy.
we can't reduce the levy, we can't set the money aside. You could set the money to, there's a variety of uses, it's really yet to be definitive.
But
You could actually use the money for essential workers. And the example I actually gave to Mr. Sheridan, farm workers were essential. So a particular county or legislative body or whatever could say every farm worker in the county, we give them $5,000. That actually would fit into the definition of how those funds could be used. That's just an example. So it's really limiting of how we use these funds, you know. So, but yeah, that wide open, that generic in the example I just gave you, a county could determine who's essential and and distribute the money. So there's about, we're just short of $21 million. And I think Ruth and I are working together. We meant to meet Thursday on it, and we ended up discussing another topic. And so we're planning on meeting today too. And so we're waiting for the survey. The survey is due in December.
End of this month.
The end of this month. So we'll look at that. We'll get together with the committee. Tony Urquhart, Jim Reagan, and Mr. Dan Fay are on this committee. And so we'll have to get together at that time. Mr. Reagan.
Ruth, and Mr. Chairman, in your, as you study that, could you look into whether or not we could use any of the funds for weatherization? You know, one of the, obviously, you know, there's a big need for heating assistance in the county, but helping, we have a very older housing stock here in St. Lawrence County, and helping to weatherize a lot of these owner-occupied units in order to reduce their need for heating assistance will, in my opinion, pay off in the long term. I know that, you know, there aren't enough contractors to do the job all, you know, right away, but, you know, I would be very interested in seeing whether we could set aside some of the money to encourage that kind of activity, because I think over the long term, it could help reduce the need for heating assistance for a lot of families, and help make a lot of these older homes more energy efficient and safer and better places to live. And so if you could look into that, I would appreciate that.
Mr. Lightfoot.
Well, I also talked to the towns and villages that I represent. I didn't get responses back from all of them, but two of them, Morristown and Hewelton, are against what we are considering. And the argument that they gave, and Morristown actually did a computation there on what it was going to cost them. And they estimated upwards of in excess of $40,000. And their lament was that it hurts the towns more because they've already either had their budgets in place for next year, or they're so close that, you know, they don't want to see a change in it. And they sort of compare that with the benefit to someone that would save $24 on or $40 on a $1,000 heating bill. I'm not poo-pooing that. $40 is $40 to anybody. But I'm looking at the timing. I'm looking at budgets in place that already depend on that money. I think it's a poor time to be considering it in light of that, especially when we, you know, literally tore our hair out when we were making decisions on how we were going to split up sales tax. That seemed to be, you know, a major no-no, and it was a major no-no. Why? Because the towns depend on that money. Well, they depend on this money too. And I think that if we're going to reduce the amount of money that the towns would get, then we've got an obligation to go to the towns and ask them what their feeling is about this. What's this do to your budget? Are you going to have to raise taxes in order to make up, you know, any shortfall? So while it's certainly a worthwhile project, certainly worthy of consideration, I don't think it is at this time worthy of enacting this type of benefit. And I don't think that if you went to the towns and villages and asked them to cast a vote on this, that you would get the numbers that you got, Mr. Ganesha, that 50-50 split. I think once they thought of what the ramifications were, that you'd see a different vote.
Okay, Mr. Perkins.
I can't support doing something like that, 5.5% to the tax levy. I couldn't do that. I think we really need to look at, if we're to do something, look at targeting the ones that need it. HEAP is probably has a threshold, the income threshold set probably by the state, but could we use the American Recovery or Rescue Funds to maybe increase that threshold to include maybe some of the working poor, you know, with our own money, our own standards, and target them that way. That would take care of some of the working poor. That's what we're talking about.
Good. Mr. Forsythe.
Okay, the HEAP benefit is $625. Now, every once in a while, they'll do two HEAP benefits. So 9,300 recipients times $625, $5,812,000 times 4%, $232,500. Split by two because you got to take towns and villages, so about 116,000 divided by the towns and villages. Now, Joe made a point about losing their sales tax. Ogdensburg's may be giving up $1 million in sales tax, which the towns and villages are going to assume a good portion of that. So it won't hurt them too drastically, I don't think. So it's not a ton of money. It's not $4 million by any stretch of the imagination. Just a thought. So, but that's the easiest solution. And yeah, you will miss some of the working poor, but he misses some of the working poor too, apparently. But just to give you a number. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? So I think if any action had taken place, I don't know, maybe someone could speak to Mr. Lightfoot about the Ivensberg City School District. It would not affect them. The Ivensberg City School District actually collects 7%, which I believe that income is $70,000 a month. Can anyone verify that number?
I think you'll find it's 8%. And I can't give you a dollar figure.
Okay, we do have Mrs. Cole. Go ahead, Renee.
I think that month would only be during the winter, mostly that's on their high months. I had looked up that number. I think the 74,000 that I saw was last January, but I wouldn't anticipate that they would have that in July either. So just as a note, I don't think it's the $800,000 on an annual basis. Okay.
So 70 for the month of January of last year for the city school district was 74,000 is what you're saying.
For 1 month?
For 1 month.
So you're looking at upwards of $800,000 a year.
No, you just made the point that in the summer months, you wouldn't have that. So you would take the winter months, say 4 months, times approximately 7. So, you know, $250,000 to $300,000. Okay, so let's, we've had our discussion, we can think about it. Let's move on. Do we have a need for executive session?
We do.
Mr. Arquette had his hand up.
Who does? Oh, Mr. Arquette does? I'm sorry. Tony, you have your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, I attended a wake this evening prior to the Zoom meeting, and the funeral director walked out with me and indicated, and I think this would be maybe a question for purchasing or, but he said that the quality of the body bags that they're receiving at this point in time, which are obviously pursued by or purchased by the county, were at such a low level of quality that he was, you know, extremely concerned about it. He said he did notify somebody and provided a vendor that has a much higher quality body bag for a fair price. So I gave him my word I would bring that up to the group this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Tony, if you could forward that information on to Mrs. Doyle, that would be great. Mr. Terminelli.
Thank you. I apologize for being tardy and hopefully you didn't cover this. I just have a question again about, I know municipalities are starting to formulate their budget for next year and reconcile the end of year. And I know that the compact gaming funds has been brought up several times. I don't know if we've heard anything more. And I was also wondering, I don't know if we've received a payment since sports betting became, a big thing, but is that calculated into that compact gaming fund payment as well?
Yes.
So we have not received a payment since the third quarter of 2019. And I spoke with the supervisor last week in Brazier, but also certainly pass it along. Wanted to talk with you about the potential for an option, but our hope is that those funds will start flowing soon, but we are now 6 quarters, I think, 7 quarters out. And Renee's been checking on a periodic basis without much of an answer. Renee, did you want to comment?
Yeah, thank you. I don't have any good news on that front either. We haven't received anything, and I have not had any further communication and I don't have a good feeling that I'm going to get anywhere on that. I feel like it needs to kind of go further up the chain than the contact at the gaming authority. But I will say, on the subject of this, I had a phone call from a town supervisor, and I clarify this in case any of the other legislators have heard this from theirs. So their question was that someone had been on See Through New York, noted that we had recorded a revenue in that line, and they didn't understand why they weren't receiving, the town wasn't receiving theirs. And I wanted to let you know, we operate on modified accrual. So although we did not receive the money, we still record revenue and put a receivable on our books as a placeholder that the state still owes us the money. But when you were to look at the financials from last year, that revenue line would show, a revenue. It's an estimate. We put something in there because we want to make sure that we have something to follow up on. And, who knows what could happen, if it takes another year or something to get this figured out. I'm not in the office anymore. I don't know, lose our memories. But I just wanted to let you know, if you had any questions, that is why they would see something there. It's not that we received it. We just recorded that it's due. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Arquette has a comment.
Yes, thank you. I spoke with Town Supervisor O'Shaughnessy and Brazier Town Supervisor Peets, along with Ruth, and this was last week. And they had done their homework. That's where that information was discovered. But thank you, Renee, for explaining it to them. They both appreciated it greatly. But Ruth and I had discussed the possibility of putting together a letter, a joint letter with the town of Brazier, the town of Messina, and St. Lawrence County to the governor's office, asking, for those funds to be delivered to us as soon as possible. And I think that's a great idea.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, Ruth, the executive session, we have, for what categories are we needed?
We have reason to meet for negotiations, for litigation, for personnel, to discuss the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation, and appointments. And as we go into executive session, I wanted to share those photos with you about highway. So that's what you'll see on the screen.
Okay, and photos are only for executive session?
No, as we transition.
Okay.
Put them up on YouTube.
Right, I would entertain a motion by Mr. Perkins, second by Mr. Denisha and Mr. Smithers to go to executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Dylan will share the pictures now.
Yeah.
So here it is. When I showed it to you before, it didn't have a cover on it. So now you can see the walls are up, the trusses are on, and they're storing sand and salt in there.
That's in Russell?
Yep. Yep. And then the other picture, you have that one down of the building. You got the pavement poured there. And there's the building itself. So we're making progress.